The tension was already thick at the Love and Hip Hop reunion, but no one expected what happened next. Rasheeda Frost, a woman known for her fiery personality and strength, has always seemed unshakable until now. Kirk Frost, her husband of many years, stood in disbelief as he caught her red-handed in the most shocking betrayal of all. No one saw it coming. Kirk, who had stood by Rasheeda through thick and thin, never imagined he'd be forced to confront the truth about his wife's secret affair. The cameras captured every moment of Kirk's devastation as he discovered Rasheeda's shocking infidelity. Emotions ran high, and the explosive argument that followed was nothing short of dramatic. Kirk's heart shattered in real time as he demanded answers, and Rasheeda couldn't hide from the truth any longer. But the fallout didn't stop there. Fans were left stunned, and family members were torn between loyalty and love, unsure where they stood in the wake of this betrayal. The question on everyone's mind: can their marriage survive the ultimate betrayal, or is this the beginning of the end? Stay tuned, because what happens next will change everything. It was supposed to be a celebratory moment, a reunion filled with drama, excitement, and the typical love and hip-hop chaos. Fans eagerly awaited the reunion episode, knowing that tensions between the cast were always high, but no one could have predicted what would unfold that night. Kirk Frost, who had always been known as the loyal husband, would find himself caught in the middle of an explosive revelation that would leave him shattered and unable to comprehend the truth. Rasheeda Frost, Kirk's wife of many years, had always been the picture of strength and grace on the show, but behind the scenes, her carefully crafted image was starting to crack. Kirk had always trusted her, but there were whispers, rumors, and moments of doubt that had been simmering beneath the surface. He had no idea that tonight would be the night everything would change. The reunion episode began like any other, with the cast members seated on stage, ready to air their grievances, relive the drama, and bask in the spotlight. As the cameras rolled, Kirk and Rasheeda sat next to each other, seemingly unaffected by the tension in the room. The crowd cheered and the atmosphere was electric, but Kirk couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The energy between him and Rasheeda felt different, distant even. It was as if a wall had slowly been built between them over the past few months, and Kirk couldn't figure out why. As the evening went on, it became clear that the other cast members had their own issues to air. Arguments flared, accusations were thrown, and the drama reached new heights. But Kirk's attention was elsewhere. His mind kept wandering back to the strange interactions he witnessed between Rasheeda and a certain cast member, someone Kirk didn't trust. Kirk had always known that his wife and this person shared a complicated history, but he never thought it would lead to something more. Now, as he watched Rasheeda laugh and chat with the individual, a knot tightened in his stomach. It wasn't until a break in the filming that everything came crashing down. The tension between Kirk and Rasheeda had become unbearable, and it seemed like everyone else had noticed. Fans who watched the show live could sense something was wrong. Even the cast members whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what had caused the sudden shift. The cameras were still rolling when Kirk, unable to hold back any longer, confronted Rasheeda in the midst of the chaos. "What's going on with you and him?" Kirk asked, his voice laced with confusion and hurt. Rasheeda, caught off guard, immediately stiffened. She tried to mask her emotions, but it was clear that Kirk had touched on something deep. The other cast members exchanged glances, sensing that things were about to get very messy. Rasheeda, avoiding eye contact with Kirk, tried to deflect the question. "What are you talking about, Kirk?" She replied, her voice trembling slightly. It was the first time Kirk had heard that tone from her in years. He could feel the walls she had built around herself slowly crumbling. She wasn't the woman he had married anymore. Something had changed, and Kirk wasn't sure if he could handle the truth. But Kirk wasn't backing down. He needed answers. "Don't act like you don't know," he said, his voice rising with frustration. "I've seen the way you've been acting lately, the way you're always with him. You think I don't know this?" His words were cutting, and the emotion behind them was raw. Kirk was desperate to understand what had happened to their marriage. He wanted to believe that it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe his paranoia was getting the best of him. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. The doubt had festered for too long. Rasheeda's face hardened, and for a moment, it seemed like she was going to deny everything. But then, in a moment of weakness, she let out a heavy sigh. She looked at Kirk, and for the first time, Kirk saw the guilt in her eyes. It was a look he hadn't seen in years, and it sent a chill down his spine. His heart skipped a beat as the realization began to sink in. This wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. There was something more. "I didn't want you to find out like this," Rasheeda whispered, her voice barely audible. Kirk's blood ran cold as he stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. "I didn't want to hurt you." She paused, struggling to find the right words. "It's complicated." The room fell silent as Kirk tried to make sense of what he had just heard. His mind raced as he tried to connect the dots. It was like a punch to the gut, and he couldn't breathe. Everything he had believed about his marriage, about his relationship with Rasheeda, was now in question. He couldn't bring himself to ask the next question, but he knew it was inevitable. "Who is it?" Kirk asked, his voice barely a whisper. The weight of the words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. There was no turning back now. He had to know the truth. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for Rasheeda's response. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, but at that moment, he felt like he had already lost her. Everything they had built, the family they had created, was falling apart in front of him. Rasheeda hesitated for a moment, the silence between them unbearable. Kirk's mind was racing, and he couldn't focus on anything except for the growing sense of betrayal that was consuming him. Finally, Rasheeda spoke. "It's him," she said, nodding toward the man Kirk had always been suspicious of. Kirk's blood boiled. His worst fears had been realized. His wife had been having an affair with the very person he had trusted the least. His world, once solid and secure, had shattered into a million pieces. The truth hit Kirk like a freight train. His wife, the woman he had loved and stood by for so long, had betrayed him in the most unforgivable way. The room seemed to spin around him, and he struggled to keep his composure. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he fought them back. This was the moment he had feared for so long, and now that it had arrived, he didn't know how to handle it. As Kirk's emotions exploded, the tension in the room escalated. The other cast members, who had been watching from a distance, quickly realized what was happening. Whispers filled the air, and cameras zoomed in on the painful confrontation unfolding before them. Fans watching from home could feel the raw emotion in the room, and it was clear that this moment would be one of the most talked about scenes in love and hip-hop history. But Kirk couldn't think about the cameras or the fans right now. All he could think about was the woman he had given everything to, the woman who had now broken his heart beyond repair. In that moment, Kirk was unsure of what came next. Would he confront Rasheeda further, or would he walk away from it all? Would he fight for their marriage, or was this the final straw that had torn them apart forever? The episode was far from over, and the drama was just beginning. But for Kirk, the world as he knew it had already changed forever. The question was, how would he handle it? The tension in the room was thick, suffocating even. Kirk's heart was racing, and his mind was a blur. He couldn't believe the words he had just heard. Rasheeda, his wife, the woman he had shared so many years with, had betrayed him in the worst possible way. The moment felt like it was suspended in time, and the pain in Kirk's chest seemed to grow with every passing second. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, and for a brief moment, everything around him faded away. The other cast members were on edge, trying to process what they had just witnessed. No one had expected this. This wasn't the drama they had been anticipating. This was real, raw, and painful. Even the cameras seemed to capture every moment in painful detail, as if they were focusing in on the exact moment Kirk's world had been torn apart. They couldn't look away, and neither could Kirk. His thoughts were scattered, but one thing was clear: his wife had chosen someone else. Someone he had never trusted, someone he had always been suspicious of, and now that suspicion had been confirmed. Rasheeda stood there, her eyes filled with regret and guilt, but there was nothing she could say that could undo the damage. Kirk's heart ached as he looked at her, his mind struggling to understand how they had arrived at this point. All those years of building a life together, raising their children, facing the ups and downs of the reality TV world, and now it was all crumbling before him. He had stood by her side through everything, and now this. The silence between them felt like it lasted an eternity. Kirk's emotions were swirling: anger, hurt, betrayal, confusion. But there was one emotion that stood out above the rest: heartbreak. This was the woman he had trusted with everything, and now she had shattered that trust in a single moment. The woman who had once been his partner, his confidant, was now the one who had torn his heart out. "How could you do this?" Kirk finally managed to ask, his voice trembling with raw emotion. His words were barely a whisper, but they cut through the air like a dagger. Rasheeda winced at the pain in his voice, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze. It was as if she knew there was nothing she could say that would make it right, and in that moment, Kirk realized something. No matter how many times Rasheeda apologized, no matter how many excuses she made, nothing could undo the betrayal. The damage had been done. The camera zoomed in on Kirk's face, capturing every moment of his anguish. It was clear that he was struggling to hold it together, but the weight of the situation was too much. The anger was building inside him, and he could feel the rage threatening to consume him. He had never been the type to lose control, but right now, he was teetering on the edge. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about everything they had built together, everything that had been destroyed in an instant. "I can't believe you would do this to me," Kirk muttered under his breath, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The fury in his eyes was unmistakable. He was hurt, yes, but he was also angry. How could she betray him like this? How could she do this to their family? And more importantly, how could she do it with someone he had always felt was trouble, someone he had always known was trouble? The truth was, Kirk had never trusted the man in question. He had always felt like there was something off about him, but he had tried to push those feelings aside. He had hoped he was wrong. He had hoped that Rasheeda was the strong, faithful woman she had always appeared to be. But now, in this heartbreaking moment, all of his doubts had been confirmed. The person he had feared most was now the person who had stolen his wife's heart. Rasheeda, sensing the anger in Kirk's voice, took a deep breath. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. There was no escaping the truth. She had betrayed Kirk, and no amount of apologies could change that. "Kirk, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking as she finally looked up at him. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for it to go this far." Her words were soft, but they did nothing to ease the pain in Kirk's heart. The apology was hollow, empty, because nothing could fix the devastation she had caused. But Kirk wasn't having it. He couldn't even look at her anymore. The sight of her face, the woman he thought he knew better than anyone, was now a painful reminder of his shattered world. "You say you're sorry, but it doesn't matter," Kirk spat out, his voice sharp and bitter. "You've already done the damage. I don't even know who you are anymore." His words stung like acid, and they were meant to. He wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the pain she had caused. But deep down, Kirk knew that nothing he said could make this right. The trust had been broken beyond repair. The other cast members, who had been watching the confrontation unfold, were now whispering among themselves. The once lively reunion was now filled with a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Fans watching from home were in shock, their jaws dropping as they witnessed the heartbreaking unraveling of a marriage they had once thought to be unbreakable. Kirk and Rasheeda had been one of the strongest couples on the show, but now it seemed like their bond was nothing but a distant memory. As Kirk struggled to hold it together, the tension in the room escalated. Everyone knew that something needed to be said, something needed to break the silence, but no one knew what to do. The cast members were hesitant, unsure whether to intervene or let Kirk and Rasheeda work through their issues on their own. But Kirk wasn't interested in resolving things with Rasheeda right now. He needed answers, and he needed to process the betrayal on his own terms. Why him, Rasheeda? Kirk finally demanded. Why not anyone else? Why him? His voice was filled with anguish, and the question echoed in the silence. Rasheeda opened her mouth to answer, but the words didn't come. There was no easy explanation for her actions, no justification that could make Kirk feel better. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. I don't know, Kirk, she admitted quietly, her voice full of regret. I was lost. I don't have an excuse. I messed up. I couldn't stop it. The rawness in her voice made Kirk's chest tighten, but the pain was too much. He couldn't listen to her excuses anymore. He had heard enough. It's over, Rasheeda, Kirk said, his voice steady but broken. I can't do this anymore. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Rasheeda standing there, surrounded by the heavy weight of the truth. The reunion was over for Kirk, but for Rasheeda, the consequences of her actions were just beginning. The fallout from this betrayal would be felt for months, if not years, to come. As Kirk left the stage, the cast members exchanged glances, unsure of what would happen next. The cameras continued to roll, capturing the raw emotions of the moment, and the fans were left on the edge of their seats, wondering what would happen between Kirk and Rasheeda. Would they find their way back to each other, or was this the end of their love story? The drama was far from over, and the world was watching, waiting for the next shocking twist. The days following Kirk's heartbreaking confrontation with Rasheeda were filled with chaos. Kirk was struggling to come to terms with what had happened, but he couldn't escape the harsh reality that his marriage was in ruins. Every time he tried to focus on something else, images of Rasheeda's betrayal flooded his mind. He could see her face, hear her voice, and feel the sting of her actions. And no matter how hard he tried, the pain didn't go away. It was like a constant weight on his chest, one that grew heavier with each passing moment. Rasheeda, on the other hand, was feeling the consequences of her actions more than she could have ever anticipated. After Kirk stormed off, she was left in the wreckage of her decisions, surrounded by the cameras and the eyes of her fellow cast members, who were still trying to process everything. It was clear that things had gone too far. She could already feel the judgment from her peers, and the guilt gnawed at her every time she looked in the mirror. This wasn't the woman she wanted to be, but there was no turning back now. Her phone buzzed, a message from the person she had been seeing behind Kirk's back. It was a brief message, but it was enough to send a cold chill through her body. He had been the one who had made her feel special when Kirk was distracted with his own life, his own career, and his own issues. But now, with Kirk gone, she realized just how much she had lost and just how little she had gained in return. The affair had been a temporary escape, a distraction from the problems she felt were suffocating her, but now it felt like nothing more than a mistake. The man she had been involved with was nowhere to be found, and her marriage was falling apart. As the fallout continued, Kirk was receiving messages from friends and family, all of them offering their support, but none of them able to ease the pain he was feeling. Even his closest friends didn't know what to say. He had always been the strong one, the one who had held things together. But now he felt like a broken man. He was questioning everything: his marriage, his family, his future. All of it was uncertain. His family was divided too. Some members took Kirk's side, understanding the immense hurt he was feeling, while others, especially Rasheeda's family, tried to defend her, insisting that she was a good person who had simply made a mistake. But the more Kirk heard these excuses, the angrier he became. There was no excuse for what Rasheeda had done. She had betrayed his trust, and the damage was irreparable. When Kirk finally decided to address the situation publicly, he did so in a way that no one saw coming. He posted a cryptic message on his social media, a statement that sent shockwaves through his followers. Sometimes, the people closest to you can hurt you the most. Betrayal is a wound that takes a lifetime to heal, but in time, we all move on and grow stronger. It's the only way. The post was vague, but everyone knew who he was talking about. The fans flooded the comments, offering their sympathy, But the underlying question remained. Would Kirk and Rasheeda ever be able to repair their relationship, or was this the final chapter in their marriage? Meanwhile, Rasheeda was facing her own battle. She had gone from being the strong, independent woman everyone admired to the villain in the eyes of the public. Fans who had once supported her were now calling her out, accusing her of being deceitful, unfaithful, and unworthy of Kirk's love. The pressure was mounting, and she couldn't take it anymore. She decided to speak out, but not in the way Kirk had hoped. "I made a mistake," Rasheeda said in an emotional video that she posted online. "I betrayed Kirk, and I regret it every day. But I'm not the only one to blame. Kirk and I have been through so much over the years, and things were never perfect. We both made mistakes. We both let each other down. I just let my emotions get the best of me. I never wanted it to go this far, but it did, and now I have to live with it." Her words were raw and heartfelt, but they didn't do much to ease the tension. The fans who had once adored her were now torn. Some understood her pain, while others felt betrayed by her actions. The reality was, Rasheeda had lost the trust of her followers, and the damage was not easily undone. The comment section was flooded with mixed emotions. Some people called her brave for owning up to her mistakes, while others couldn't forgive the fact that she had betrayed Kirk in such a public and hurtful way. As the drama continued to unfold, Kirk and Rasheeda's lives were turned upside down. Kirk had retreated from the public eye, avoiding interviews and staying out of the spotlight as he tried to heal. But every time he thought he was beginning to move on, the whispers of his betrayal seemed to follow him. It wasn't just the fans who were talking, it was the media too. Every news outlet was covering the story, analyzing every word from Kirk and Rasheeda, dissecting their every move. It was as if their lives had become one big reality TV show, and no one knew how the story would end. Meanwhile, Rasheeda was trying to rebuild her life, but it wasn't easy. She had alienated her friends, her family was torn, and she couldn't escape the public scrutiny. She felt lost, confused, and unsure of how to move forward. The affair had been a way to escape her problems, but now it felt like it had made everything worse. She wanted to make things right with Kirk, but she didn't know if he would ever forgive her. And even if he did, would things ever be the same again? The tension between Kirk and Rasheeda was palpable. Every time they were in the same room, the air was thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Neither of them knew what the future held, but one thing was clear: their relationship had changed forever. The question now was whether they could rebuild it, or whether this was the end of their journey together. The drama wasn't just about Kirk and Rasheeda anymore. It was about how their actions had affected everyone around them. Their friends, their families, their fans, all of them were now a part of this twisted narrative. The ripple effect of this betrayal was undeniable, and no one knew what the future would hold for either Kirk or Rasheeda. But one thing was for sure: the road ahead would be anything but easy. As the days passed, Kirk and Rasheeda's lives became a public spectacle, with no way to escape the growing drama. Despite their attempts to keep things private, the media circus around them only intensified. Every time Kirk and Rasheeda made an appearance, whether it was at a family gathering or a public event, the cameras were there, waiting to capture every awkward moment, every uncomfortable exchange. It was as if the world was watching their every move, hoping for a moment of reconciliation or, even better, another explosive outburst. But neither Kirk nor Rasheeda were prepared for the way things would unfold next. Kirk, in a desperate attempt to gain some semblance of control over his life, decided to speak out once again. This time, however, he wasn't going to hold back. During a tense interview with a popular talk show host, Kirk made his feelings clear. "I've been hurt," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Rasheeda and I have been through a lot, but this betrayal? It's something I never expected. She's my wife, the mother of my children, and she chose to break my heart. I don't know how to move forward from that. I'm still trying to figure that out." The interview quickly went viral, with fans weighing in on Kirk's side. Many of them expressed sympathy for his pain, and the comments flooded in, offering support and solidarity. "You don't deserve this," one fan wrote. "Rasheeda has some explaining to do." Others were more critical of Kirk, accusing him of being too quick to judge and demanding that he give Rasheeda a chance to explain herself. But despite the divided opinions, Kirk remained firm in his stance. He didn't need anyone to tell him how to feel. His pain was real, and the betrayal was something he couldn't easily forget. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was feeling the weight of Kirk's words more than ever. She knew she had made a grave mistake, but the public backlash was becoming unbearable. She had hoped that her heartfelt apology would lead to some form of understanding, but instead, it felt like the walls were closing in on her. Every time she looked at her phone, there were more messages, more notifications, more people demanding answers. The shame she felt was overwhelming, and the guilt was eating away at her from the inside. She couldn't escape the reality of what she had done. She had hurt the one person who had been there for her through thick and thin, and now she was paying the price. In an effort to clear the air, Rasheeda agreed to sit down for a one-on-one interview with the same talk show host who had interviewed Kirk. She knew it was her last chance to salvage any hope of redemption, but she wasn't sure if it was even possible. The cameras were rolling as she sat nervously in the chair, her hands trembling slightly. The host looked at her, giving her a moment to gather her thoughts before asking the question that everyone had been waiting for. "Rasheeda, we've heard Kirk's side of the story. Now we need to hear yours. What happened?" With a deep sigh, Rasheeda began to speak. "I know I messed up," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I don't have any excuses for what I did. What Kirk and I had, it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and I let my emotions get the best of me. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm sorry. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. All I can do is try to move forward and hope that someday Kirk can find it in his heart to forgive me." The interview was raw and emotional, but it didn't quite have the desired effect. While some fans expressed compassion for Rasheeda, many remained unconvinced. They wanted to hear more than just an apology. They wanted to know why she had betrayed Kirk, why she had let things go so far. The questions kept coming, and Rasheeda found herself unable to provide the answers they were looking for. She was left feeling like she was drowning in a sea of expectations and criticism with no clear way out. The aftermath of the interview was just as intense as the fallout from the betrayal itself. The public's reaction was mixed, with some people siding with Kirk, while others supported Rasheeda. But one thing was clear, the couple's marriage was on the line. They had both made mistakes, and neither of them was willing to back down. It was a battle of pride, hurt, and unresolved emotions, and neither Kirk nor Rasheeda knew how it would end. Meanwhile, the people around them were also being affected by the drama. Kirk's family was split down the middle, with some members urging him to fight for his marriage, while others told him it might be time to let go. They saw how much pain Kirk was in, and they knew that if he stayed in this toxic relationship, it could destroy him. But Kirk was adamant. "I'm not giving up on my family," he declared. "But I can't just forget what happened. I need time to process everything, and I need Rasheeda to understand that." Rasheeda, too, was grappling with the consequences of her actions. She had alienated friends and family members who once supported her, and now she was facing the possibility of losing everything. The affair had been a mistake, but the damage it had caused seemed insurmountable. As the weeks went by, she found herself questioning whether she could ever regain Kirk's trust, or if she had permanently ruined their relationship. The tension between Kirk and Rasheeda reached a boiling point during a family dinner, when an argument erupted between the two. Emotions ran high as they exchanged words, each one accusing the other of being responsible for the breakdown of their marriage. Kirk's anger was palpable, but there was a sadness in his eyes that no one could ignore. Rasheeda, too, was visibly hurt, but her regret wasn't enough to fix the damage. The dinner ended in silence, with both of them retreating to their separate corners, unable to find common ground. The truth was, no one knew what would happen next. Would Kirk and Rasheeda be able to rebuild their marriage, or was this the end of their journey together? Fans were divided, with some believing that the couple could overcome their struggles, while others felt that the trust had been broken beyond repair. The media continued to cover their every move, making it clear that the drama was far from over. But one thing was certain: the road ahead for Kirk and Rasheeda would be filled with uncertainty, pain, and difficult decisions. And only time would tell if they could ever truly heal from the betrayal that had rocked their world. As this dramatic story continues to unfold, the big question remains: can Kirk and Rasheeda find a way back to each other, or is this the final chapter in their tumultuous journey? Emotions are running high, and the stakes couldn't be higher for the couple, their families, and their fans. While Kirk and Rasheeda's future remains uncertain, one thing is clear: the aftermath of this betrayal will haunt them for years to come. What do you think? Do you believe Kirk and Rasheeda can ever repair the damage done? Or is this relationship beyond saving? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know what you think about this shocking twist in their love story. If you're following the drama and want to stay updated on all the latest gossip and celebrity scandals, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll keep you in the loop with the latest breaking news, shocking betrayal, and everything happening in the world of reality TV and beyond. Join the conversation and make sure you're not missing out on what happens next. We'll be back soon with more juicy updates.